Well, you have to now pray for all the wasps. Pray that all their little wasp souls will be reborn in better life. Mainly, I regard it as I don't think I'd like to put things in such absolute terms, as you can tell, just to increase one's respect for life. I mean, and to see it in kind of too black and white a way tends to make us always worry and fret about things. So I think like the ahimsa of Buddhism, or non-violence, non-killing, these are ways of thinking and moving, in which we try to be more gentle, more respectful to life, more considerate. But to think it in too absolute a way, then it becomes, we can't even move, because you might step on an ant, or pretty soon you have to give up being a doctor, because you'll have to give up giving antibiotics, because that's killing off germs. It gets to the point where it becomes totally absurd. So I try to recognize that life is try to do the best I can with it, and if I do something like that, if I have to do something on that level, then I accept the karma of it. And the idea of accepting that, rather than whatever that might involve, I'll accept that. Is learning to live with wasps, and I mean, actually, I've found like living in Thailand, where there is so much life. It's a vibrant country with is like an incubator. Everything kind of is there. Everything grows and abundantly, and insect life is. There's nothing here in Britain. Insect life is almost no problem compared to what you have in Thailand. But what I trained myself as a monk to learn how to live with all of those different creatures. And it did take time, because it wasn't, one's conditioning was to try to control it a lot. But eventually we learned how, like in monasteries, you learn how to do things to your kuti and whatnot, so that ants don't want to come in it. And you'd put, like we'd wrap oil-soaked rags around the pillars, and ants don't like to crawl over oil, so they won't go up the pillars. Or we'd make little troughs around the kuti and put water in them, because they wouldn't swim across the water. Things like this. Ways of kind of discouraging insects from taking over your kuti. And generally, looking back now, I realized that I learned a lot from that, learning how to, say, coexist with things, with the creepy crawly world, insect world, which, say, we tended to annihilate, where I was brought up to use sprays and various other things, because insect sprays, and to just get rid of things very quickly, immediately. But patience is patient endurance, learning to just learn how to bear with annoyances and frustrations and irritations. I think is a lesson that we never have enough of, those kind of lessons. especially in the we tend to want to make everything efficient and have very effective and to just to try to annihilate, get rid of all that is frustrating, annoying, aggravating. But then what we're doing is we see the pollution, the degeneration of the society. All these are the results of impatience, really, and of just human greed, wanting things, on our own terms.
Many of us have phobias, and my phobia is large spiders. I was wondering whether mindfulness practice and observing the first precept, for example, does it lead to an erosion or a disappearance of phobia? Is it the experience that we have practiced non-kindness or practice?
Yeah, those things you can resolve, but it's more or less accepting it rather than trying to get rid of the phobia, and identifying more and really seeing the feeling of it, rather than, because oftentimes intellectually you would like to get rid of it, not have it, and then, but it's an emotional thing. It's not an intellectual thing. So this is where that particular phobia, we don't make anything about. When the conditions are there, then work with it. But I don't think you have to go out and kind of deliberately kind of befriend big spiders to get rid of the phobia.
But often, I know in the past I used to tell them. I have a sense that my phobia is left me as I stopped doing that. I wonder whether that was...
Probably, yes. Well, those things are very strange. Why we have such strange little quirks. At Chittahurst in the shrine room, there's those spiders that crawl across the shrine room. You see them. See them come out, and suddenly, in the middle of a meditation, and somebody will go. I see that we tend to we tend to make problems about, just because life is problematic, really. And there's the idea that we shouldn't have problems, or that it shouldn't be the way it is. I think like just as people more understand themselves into the individuals, then our relationships with others tend to be much, we learn how to respond and how to get on with each other. But if we kind of have fixed ideas, as because this person, you do this and I don't like it, and the tendency to hold on to a fixed perception of each other. I've just noticed in how easy it is to relate to someone, how we tend to react to someone through a perception of them, and then I keep questioning: is that perception a real person, or is it just in my head? And the more then I begin to see that my perception is in here. It's not you. It's the perception in my mind. And then dropping that, then there's through understanding that more and more, then you realize you don't have to hold people in your mind with fixed ideas. And then because of that, then one is more open to an immediate situation rather than always a kind of, like in marriages, so much of the unhappiness of marriage is just getting kind of into fixed reactions to each other, and where we just repeat the same things over and over again. We react. It's shocking sometimes to see people who've been married 60 years and really don't know each other at all. Makes you wonder, how you can live so intimately, physically, share the same bed and live in the same house for 60 years and still have missed out on really understanding the person that you're living with, because it's so easy to just reaffirm each other's personalities all the time.
I suppose I'm saying, is it possible to be a Buddhist and to be a counsellor? I don't know whether the two things actually can.
I think you'd be by being a Buddhist, you'd be a superb counsellor. Because counseling is we need counselors. We need people that can remind us and help us. But as you understand Dhamma more, then the kind of counseling that comes from the personality view will become less meaningful. Then I think you'll trust more your own intuition rather than maybe the theories of counseling that you've acquired.
If I feel you can only empathise to the limit that you can also withdraw.
Right.
And that's go within possibly to withdraw, I think, or strengthens that ability to withdraw.
Well, when you already think that somebody is a certain thing, then people that go to counselors are looking for some kind of, they often think, well, what's wrong with me? And you say, well, you're too much this way or that way. That tends to reaffirm a personality, that you shouldn't be the way you are, and that these things, these habits you have are what you are, and you shouldn't have them, or you should try to get rid of them. So then the problem really is maybe not so much with their habits as with their belief that they are the habits. And as long as that's reaffirmed and enforced, then you might be able to say change your ways so that your habits aren't so irritating to your partner or whatever, but still the basic problem is still there, the basic delusion. And this is notice when on these talks, what I try to do is not to encourage any identities with any conditions, but to try to, if I do put anything into your mind, I want it to be a suggestion that will help you to be mindful, rather than tell you, try to put an idea that you are something or other. If I say, your true nature is unconditioned, it's not for you to go, my true nature is unconditioned. It's but to change to give that as a reflection, to get away from, it's so fixed in identity with your body or with your emotions. Because that helps to reflect it. If you, when we're so identified with the body or the emotions and the views, then I give you another view on a personal level. You just you're changing costumes mainly, but you're not actually seeing that it's a view. That it might be a different view than the one you have, but it's still a view. Where the reflective taking you to develop reflective meditation, then you can see how your mind has been conditioned, and that seeing, that direct seeing, is not conditioned on a personal level. It's when you connect to the ultimate reality. And it's mindfulness. It's like going to the very core, the very center, or the Bodhi tree, or the place of enlightenment. These symbols, in religious symbols, is like the Bodhi tree in Buddhism is the place of enlightenment. But we use it maybe, you see pictures of the Buddha sitting under the Bodhi tree. But actually, as an experience, as here and now, it's not. You don't go around trying to find a Bodhi tree to sit under. But you can be aware of, to be mindful and to be aware of what's happening, the way things are. And then you can see the conditioning of your mind as merely that, as a conditioning rather than yourself. That's why this listening, I like that sense of listening to the sounds of the world, because so much of, say, the suffering of my life is the thinking process. The negative, the worry, the anxiety, the judging, these kind of nagging tendencies, or the restless, chattering mind. But that's conditioned into the mind. That's not the true nature of the mind.
You've talked a lot about reflecting or reflection, and I was thinking what you said earlier about what I think was reflecting, which was bringing into your conscious mind the pattern of restlessness, I think you said this afternoon, and thinking about it or reflecting on it over and over again until it lost its force. I don't know whether that's what you mean by reflecting, but it seems to me it's different from meditating. And I wonder if you could say a word about the distinction.
Well, there's, like, meditation contains both, a kind of concentrating on something and reflecting. Like insight meditation is reflective meditation. You're investigating. And then the samatha meditation is concentrating, putting your attention onto an object and sustaining and concentrating on that object, say like a mantra or the breathing of the body or whatever. That you're not reflecting on it but you're concentrating and sustaining. That will calm the mind. That calms the mind, refine the consciousness, so that, like sensory deprivation, or as you remove, say, exciting stimuli, then you move towards, say, a subtle breath, and then your consciousness will be influenced by the subtlety and refinements of the objects. Or if things get very violent and dramatic, exciting, then your consciousness becomes very excited and through, say, very strong vibration or impingement. Samatha meditation, where you're choosing more, going toward refining subtleties. So there's this wide spectrum from very coarse to very refined. And then the reflection is on that whatever arises ceases. So refined states also arise and cease as well as coarse. So it's the kind of like choiceless awareness, Krishnamurti says, or just awareness of the pattern of things rather than selecting particular one and suppressing the other. Like to get very refined states, you have to suppress or get away from coarse things. I mean, you can't develop, unless you've got a very strong, highly developed concentration, you can't go down to Piccadilly Circus and concentrate on the subtlety of your breath, because there are too many distractions. And then if you're, like some people come here to a Buddhist monastery, and the silence of the meditation drives them crazy. They can't stand the silence and the lack of stimulation, so they have to leave and go down to Piccadilly Circus because they're reacting. They aren't used to subtlety or refinement. They just want excitement. But in the Vipassana meditation or insight meditation, then you're observing that what arises ceases. So it's at Piccadilly Circus, or it's here on a meditation retreat, or whatever. It integrates the whole thing into an understanding, profound understanding of life, in which you're not saying, trying to control everything. Like if you become too refined and attached to refined conscious states, then you have to control everything, and you have to, if you have to go down to Piccadilly Circus, you just feel very threatened or very averse to it. It's too coarse, too vulgar, too horrible. It's upsetting. I can't stand it. It just shatters me, and I just can't bear that kind of coarse impingement. It's too horrible for me, because I have to have this very refined state to feel all right. But as you use both, or just the flow of life, then that sense of having to control falls away. You just more or less roll with the flow. You can take it as it comes. And that gives you a sense of balance and trust and kind of fearlessness. Because there's a lot of fear in your mind. If you have to, if you're very attached to these refined things, well, refinement's easily destroyed, because the world we live in is not terribly refined. Being a human being and material realm is not, by its very nature is hard to sustain refinements in it. So you recognize that we'd like ethereal realm to get rid of the coarse human body, have an ethereal body. It'd be much nicer. I think we'd all like to have ethereal bodies. And to have that kind of refinement is very attractive and very pleasing to us. But on reflection, we recognize that this is the realm we're in. It's like this. We have the coarse experiences. We have the refinement. Most of life is between those two extremes. And so then we can, with mindfulness and wisdom, then we find our response to life not from choice, not from choosing one side over another, but being able to respond to the flow of life as it happens to us. So that integrates it. Whatever does happen, it doesn't matter anymore. It's not the issue. It means that we use whatever does happen, which can be refined and beautiful, successful, happy. It can be, it's usually mixtures of both, of pleasure and pain and whatnot. That allows you to be fearless. You don't have to fear anything then. If you're attached to refinement and control, and there's a lot to fear, because if you lose control and all these coarse blokes come in and destroy all your aesthetic, your collections of fine art and all the things you depend on for happiness, well then you've got to make sure, you've got to spend a lot of money on burglar alarms and things to prevent, get to Rottweiler and a Doberman, and all kinds of things to kind of control the situation, to keep the coarse ones away. And in the process, you end up, probably being mauled by your Rottweiler. The kind of like Greek tragedies and things like this. We see all our attempts to get life on our own terms lead to, kind of defeat. I like that idea of, when you read the story of the Buddha, from the scripture, it's a very, when you really contemplate it, he even though it tends to be a bit exalted and apotheosized, actually the story is one of, he has to meet all kinds of dreadful experiences even after his enlightenment. Some of the worst things that ever happened to him were after his enlightenment. He seemed to have a fairly easy life before enlightenment. He shows that, 6 years of asceticism where he deliberately kind of starved himself and did things, but the real dramatic kind of experiences happened after his enlightenment, when the drunken elephant attacked him and his cousin David Dutta tried to kill him, and this lady accused him of impregnating her, and all it gets, whole dramatic kind of Peyton Place, Dallas Dynasty scandals, blames, accusations, and that he had to bear with in the rest of his life. But rather than trying to control, he just could flow with that and respond to it appropriately. So we have this chant called the 8 stanzas of victory, in which we chant in Pali, and it sometimes describes, where he used patience, where he used loving kindness, where he used the power of his mind and so forth. In different kind of situations, he was prepared to respond to these things in a way that wasn't was appropriate and suitable to that scene. So even though religious scriptures tend to get kind of, trying to make it seem like magic, actually, when you contemplate the life of the Buddha as we have it in scriptural form, it begins to make a lot of sense. That life is this way. It was for him. Nothing. Some of the things that happened to him have never happened to me, and probably never will. I can't imagine a drunken elephant attacking me. That's just maybe a drunken something else, but. Or the bandit Angulimala and murderer, and these kind of demonic forms and temptations and so forth. But the stories are always the Buddha recognizing it for what it is, not avoiding, not trying to get away, or feeling frightened or bitter by these experiences, but just recognizing that these things for what they are. Seems like one sees more the human body as, like I see now, like this is more of like a radio or something. It's merely some kind of sensitive instrument. It's not personal anymore. It's like a radio in the universe. It picks up things. It's sensitive. And so one listens to the radio. but one doesn't identify with the radio. I think I am a radio, or I am a sensitive form, but you recognize that it is a sensitive form, and what impinges, what affects it is, you're aware of all that. But in that awareness, there's no, you're breaking the identity with it. Like the identity is I am the radio is me, or I am this body, or I'm this person. And then of course when you become a radio or a person, then you're subject to all kinds of threats and possibilities of breakdown and so forth. That just the nature of the conditioned realm is that way. And so there is. I mean, if you go around thinking of yourself as a radio, then you're going to feel always that what if it goes off, or it doesn't work, or something destroys it, or whatever. Then those possibilities are always present for us at any time, isn't it? In these forms, there's always the possibility of being hurt, or diseased, or accident, or being humiliated or offended in some way, being abused, taken advantage of, exploited. So on that level, the identities with this form, then there's the fear and anxiety that go with that identity. But if you look at your radio, then you think, one more or less tries to protect it and take care of it, but we don't obsess worry about it all that much. We do the best we can. When it breaks down, then we try to repair it. But it's no longer, even if there's nothing we can repair, then we just accept it within the limitations of it that remain. Because there's no need to hold on to it anymore. That illusion of me and mine has been relinquished. I sometimes wonder, like with just like what we see in the world with the Soviet Union and all these ethnic identities coming up again, like in Yugoslavia or in Africa, wherever one is so identified with a particular group or cult or whatever, and this identity always, whatever you identify with, tends to create, like Jews and Gentiles, or them and us. It's always a source of division. Whatever you identify with. If we identify with being British, then it means that all the rest of the world's not British. Or with women, if you identify with being a woman, then there's men, and you feel alienated from men. Women have been abused by men all these years, and men have, then men become the enemy. Or if you identify with being a Buddhist, a Theravada Buddhist, you say, we're Theravada, and then you say, well, they're Mahayana. And then the identities with that fix on, that we bring back all the old enmities into our minds, I mean, Theravada, Mahayana, nothing to do with my life, all that happened, centuries ago, and yet I can, you find people taking sides on these issues. Western people, we're Theravada and we're not Mahayana kind of thing, and because they believe all the propaganda and all the things that have been written, all the biases and prejudices that people, that have formed around these ideas over centuries. It's like Jews and Gentiles. That always, Jews always feel alienated because there's the Jews and then there's the non-Jews. Most are non-Jews. So you're living in a world where most are non-Jews and you're a Jew. So there's this sense of division all the time, of being, separate or alienated. Well, apply that to everything. Whatever you hold, if you absolutize being Jewish, then, I don't think of myself as a Gentile, generally. They think of me as a Gentile. It's not an identity that I would, I go around kind of thinking about. I'm a Gentile. But that obviously means to them somebody that doesn't belong in their group. So there's no sense of separation. And that's the discerning mind. That's conditioned. That's not the natural mind. The pure mind has no Jew or Gentile in it. That's conditioned. That's programmed into your mind.
How then do you vote when it comes to an election?
You throw the dice and throw the coin. Well, then on the worldly plane, you recognize these are conventions that might, have their place. Conventional reality in perspective is all right. It's when it becomes fixed and becomes more than what it is that it deludes. Like say, I am a man. So that this is a convention that is appropriate maybe to a certain situation. So that on the immigration cards, when I come into Britain, they want to know my sex. I put M down because that's the appropriate response. But if I identify with being a man, that's my main identity, then it tends to then it's separates me from women. There's always this sense of you're a woman, I'm a man. So that even when that's not necessary, when that's not an appropriate response, you tend to project that onto everything. You see, so sometimes that's an appropriate response. I'm a man, you're a woman. But most of the time, that's not really, an issue that need be proclaimed at every moment of one's life. And so then, on a conventional level, it works at the time when it's appropriate. But if we fix on it, then that tends we tend to project that onto everything, and it influences everything we do. Racial prejudice is that way, isn't it? It's taking the idea of race and absolutizing it, and having very fixed views about it. And then you can't even, you tend to see people in terms of race rather than be sensitive to actually the way they are in the moment. Or just say, my memory of you as a person. Well, if I hold on to my memory, then I'm not sensitive to you as you might be right now. Because I know, you say, I'm projecting onto you. She's like this. So I'm looking at you, say, through this filter of a memory, which means that there's no sensitivity from me to you at that moment. Because the prejudice will always cut off sensitivity.
I think it's being fixed in an identity like that, something to do with karma. Is there a connection with karma?
Well, it is. It is karma, but this is where we study the law of karma, because we're not trying to identify with karma, but recognize that karma influences our experience of life. Now, why am I the way I am? How did I get born into my family? why am I this kind of person? What did I do in a previous life to be this way? And these questions have all. but what I do know is that the kind of character I have, and all of that is the karma of my life, but not to identify with it. So then the karma will cease. You're not recreating, you're not reinforcing the karma all the time. You can actually resolve the karma. You see, if I say people have certain strong tendencies, like some people tend to have a lot of anger, and other people a lot of lust, or other people a lot of delusion, or whatever, and we think, and if we fix on that, and I'm a person with a lot of anger, then, and so probably in a previous life I did a lot of things, and in this life I'm, stuck with this bad karma, and identify with this anger more and more. And then oftentimes when you have a lot of anger, you want to get rid of it. So you're trying to find ways of getting rid of your anger, and then that even makes you angrier. Because the more you try to get rid of it, the more you tend to create the conditions for getting angry. So then, and then that reinforces the attitude of I'm an angry person. I'm hopeless. Anger is me, and I'm angry, and I shouldn't be, and I don't know what to do. It's probably previous life, and so you're stuck. You seem like you're kind of stuck in this cycle all the time. There's no way out. There is a way out, and that's through reflecting on the cycle. So that anger is no longer, you're no longer thinking of it as yours. You're just recognizing it when it's present, when it's absent. And when it's present, you're patient, rather than reacting. I don't want this anger. You're more or less accepting the feeling, the actual experience of it ceases. You're aware when it's gone. So then instead of thinking of yourself all the time as an angry person, you realize that anger comes and goes, and then there's no anger. More and more you'll abide in no anger. And then anger, the conditions that you create to get angry will start fading out, because you're not creating a connection to anger. Like if you're trying to get rid of anger, you're actually karmically connected to it very strongly. Like suppressing anger increases anger, doesn't get rid of it. The dark side. That's interesting, because we find ourselves with a dark side also. And sometimes we become fascinated with that. Evil and the dark side, or that can be kind of fascinating, interesting. And there's also a fear of that, of latent potential. But this is where I think the religious life has its function very much in establishing a faith in something, like our basic faith in Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. That's where we put our trust. So then we can look at the dark side of our, the maniacal or the irrational or the monstrous or the demonic side or conditions that arise in our minds. If you have this, if you still look at it on a personal way, that can be quite frightening. But if you're looking at it merely as what arises ceases, then you you have a foundation to be able to deal with, say, demonic feelings or thoughts that you don't have. If you're looking at it on, I have these demonic forces in me, then that tends to have this idea that there's something demonic in you on a kind of permanent basis, which is, pretty frightening. But if you establish this sense of trust in truth, in your true nature and ultimate reality, and Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, or these are ways of establishing faith and trust in what is ultimate and transcendent, then you can take time out to look at when demonic energies start going through your mind. You can more or less look at them and not take them so personally, be more objective with it. Where if it's related to your personality, you'll only be terrified by it. And you think, oh, I'm a terrible person. Isn't it? Some of the thoughts I've had in my life, where do these awful things come from? I've tried to be a good boy all my life. And yet, some of the thoughts that have raced through my mind have been anything but good. And think, how can, what's wrong with me that I should think these terrible thoughts? And that's on the personal level, personality. What's wrong with me that I should, if I were a good person would never think these thoughts. So I must not be a very good person. This when I remember as a child thinking this. I had these really demonic thoughts one time as a child. And I thought, I must really be horrible. I must be a horrible person. I thought, my mother would never have thoughts like this. My sister would never. The priest of the church, he never would have a thought. So it must be horrible. Frightening to think of yourself in that way. But yet, like being a radio. The radio picks up whatever is around. It doesn't particularly select, does it? If demonic things are going on, it'll pick up demons. And if angelic things are happening, it'll pick up angelic vibes. And some of the things that we pick up, and it's not personal. It's merely, those vibrations might be, what's happening around, and so you're picking it up like a sensitive instrument does. But then the interpretation is personal. I'm a demon. Then you get it all wrong. You see.
Yes, I was going to say, how do you make these judgments about that's good and that's terrible? I know a lot of life is somewhere in between.
Right. But if like goodness, I see I contemplate what is really good and what isn't. Like in myself, I see thoughts and things that tend to divide and separate, cause problems, confuse issues. I see it's something to refrain from. Or things that tend to bring clarity or unity and harmony, then I try to act on that more and more to move towards, say, using language or action, speech, all this toward trying to create harmony or unity, for compassion or joy. And then I see some tendencies will divide, will cause depressions in people, will cause confusion in others. If I say certain things, they get confused, or if I do certain things, they get disillusioned. So I try to avoid, for my own sake as well, as for them. But I have seen, like demonic energies are not something that I'm so pure that I've never ever experienced. I mean, when you hear about these serial killers and these kind of monstrous sadists and whatnot, even though it's shocking and it's appalling, it's certainly, I mean, I can understand how people can do that. I mean, I would, I've fortunately never done that, but I can understand how you could. And the conditions that maybe I've never had in my life, like the Vietnam War. When you talk to Vietnam veterans, well, I've never been in a situation that they were in. So I mean, I think, what right do I have to pass judgment on them? I mean, they might have done some kind of brutal or sadistic or violent action. That, I'm sitting here at Amaravati, Sunday afternoon, everybody's friendly, and everything's pleasant and nice, and I'm condemning this young man for having slaughtered innocent people in Vietnam during a very, intense and frightening life experience. Curious to know what I would do under similar. And so, because I've known fear and how fear can really, right now I'm not frightened of anything. But saying when conditions that bring fear in the mind, then I hope to have enough mindfulness to be able to respond in the right way, rather than in a foolish way or a horrible way. But then we can be more compassionate. We begin to understand that people oftentimes are just reacting and under intense pressures and causes that are so say strong, and that those that have never been under such stress, we can easily pass moral judgments on these people. But it doesn't help to do that. We recognize that what I really want to do now is try to bring back into human consciousness more of the perfectibility of our lives and the goodness, the basic goodness. Like, and when you think, like, I can see my life here in Britain as a Buddhist monk, when I think of it in positive terms, I realize that it's been a very good life, and that basically my experience has been a very positive and good experience. And so I would see things in a more positive way. I see the basic goodness and the aspiration of human beings, and I can see it in myself. I see it in all of you, that there's something searching for the good and love of the beautiful and the true, and that that this is very much a strong human aspiration. And so this is what I want to remind you of, rather than to try to keep reminding you of your faults or human weaknesses or the corruptibility of human beings or the selfishness of human beings. Because, I mean, we tend to see the human state in such negative terms. Like when we use well, I'm only human, is usually a justification for weakness, isn't it? Well, I told a lie and I got drunk the other night. Well, I'm only human. There's a kind of justification for weak behavior, which is all right too. But we are only human. We're not like gods but also to bring the perception of humanity, of being human, to a higher plane, because it is being human is, say in Buddhist terms, means the possibility for enlightenment. And so this I want to impress upon your minds, and to so that that will, to really contemplate that more than just continuously kind of dwell on the weaknesses or the flaws or the corruptibility or selfishness of human beings. Because that gets enough news. That gets all the attention anyway, doesn't it? Most of the attention. And to realize we're in an evolutionary process that may be, when you think of here in Hertfordshire 500 years ago, what was happening? I saw this video on witch burning the other night, and you realize in Europe, they were, and here in England they're busy burning witches. What 500 years ago or so. I'm sure there are probably a few burned around here. There's a Cathar house down in Pickett's End. They found a house down in the suburb, a little Pickett's End outside of Hemel Hempstead, a house with Cathar murals in it. And they were brutally exterminated by the church, weren't they? And people were quite willing to butcher each other and burn. I mean, imagine burning people at the stake, and watching. We don't go out and watch somebody burn out in that quadrangle. Now it's unthinkable, isn't it? Yes. And being drawn and quartered or impaled. And that was only even 100 years ago. And now you can't imagine. I can imagine people, sadistically getting thrilled by watching somebody burning to death. But generally speaking, that would be totally unacceptable to most human beings at this time. With the sadist or the kind of maniac might find that thrilling. But in those days, that was public entertainment. Or the Roman Colosseum, watching lions eat Christians. Would you want to take your family to the Colosseum on a Sunday afternoon, have your children watch these? Yet that was, we make these movies now where, they can do horrible things, but it's still kind of more fantasy than reality. But it's still bad influence. But it's a kind of an atavistic tendency to go back toward that kind of brutal state. But what we need to try to encourage is rising up towards a finer state, towards the perfection of humanity. And there's not much encouragement toward that now. The society tends to put us into a position of being kind of mediocre consumers, and where identity is with consuming things. Yes?
I'm interested in children, and I have a 3-year-old grandson who has nightmares about monsters, and not just nightmares, but in the daytime he's afraid of monsters and woods and things like this. And I just wonder what your thoughts are on how to help him to deal with those things, which are very real to him.
Well, one very skillful way is to develop a kind of loving kindness towards them. To wish them well and to try to regard them with compassion rather than with aversion. Yeah. Metta practice. Well, because if you deny it, it's like calling him a liar, isn't it? Oh, you're just making it up. Because obviously he's not lying. Actually, these things are quite real. But then for a child, they respond. I think that's a very beautiful and important thing to instill in children, the sense of loving kindness towards to animals, to ghosts, to monsters, towards other children. Because their minds are quite malleable, and if you put the right suggestions in, then that will be a great benefit to him his whole life.
I think the important thing to find a way.
While he's innocent, you see, it's like the mind is very precious. You can put anything into it. Good, bad, clean, dirty, everything. And this is where I think, we don't. What's frightening and so kind of horrendous is how we don't really value our children's minds. We don't see how sensitive they are and